One point you made, which is a very fair point, is like if you actually look realistically, Europe sent one proper team. They just sent G2. That's a team that qualified and had the real lineup. Your team had the stand-ins. Team Liquid wasn't supposed to be there, and just look at the situation. It's not the end. It's not that shocking that they would do it badly. I'll ask the obvious bias question: if Europe could have actually sent the three best teams, so FPX goes, your team goes with you. Obviously G2 would there. Would it have been much different? Like, how do you think the other two teams would have done? Yours and FPX if they'd been there, just hypothetically.
I think FPX could get top 4 easily. I think even though I will come in, I don't think we will probably have super good results because we had problems with me and Brave, and we saw those problems against other teams without us too.
Right. Okay.
And I just feel like even with me coming and us having only one stand-in, we will still have the same problems and crumble on them.
Fair enough.
Because they were when we noticed them for the first time, they were small, but then they increased to huge size, which destroyed us against the G2 and the FPX. And I just feel like if we didn't fix that at that time, we will still crumble. But I think we will be in playoffs too. G2. I don't know really. I think same result, but I think FPX will do good.
Bearing as Geo, obviously NA somewhat shit the bed aside from Optic. It's not like I can big that region up, but I want to actually ask that question, right? Would it have made that much of a difference if EU would sent all the best teams? Because I have to say, one of the reasons I asked him about it, why he only plays 2 agents, is because when I looked, it looks like the Europeans, aside from Team Liquid bizarrely, have a bit more of a set idea of how the game's played, and they were a little bit more
Team Liquid
limited.
Is definitely the anomaly, I think.
Yeah, they're the weird ones. So would it have mattered much if Europe sent the best, do you think?
So I think, the interesting one to look at in that hypothesis for me would be the FPX going instead of Team Liquid, because Team Liquid came top of their group. I think that FPX would have been able to do that as well. And then in terms of the bracket, FPX probably would have had a much better time in the bracket than Team Liquid have. So I think from that perspective, yes, Team Liquid would have... FPX would have done better, and therefore Europe would have done better. G2 are G2. They've already shown us what they can do, which in this case was not very much. As for Fnatic, the big question for me about whether Fnatic would have had a better time is, Durka, you were just saying how you feel like one of the flaws that you guys have as a team is that you can still be a little bit too robotic and not really free-flowing. In which case, would you have been able to beat Zeta Division in the groups? Because that's the big question I would have is if Zeta Division being very intuitive players in the way that you described and what you think is a huge, a huge benefit in international competition, if that has been such a major part of why they've done well, would actual Fnatic have been able to stop them in the group stage? Because I don't know about DRX did very well in the group stage. Zeta really would have been the team to beat, and that's where I wonder, would that have actually made much of a difference if you feel like the fundamental playstyle of structure versus looseness still would have been a problem?
I think we will beat them. Even with me, even if we play same robotic way, with me it's just it's robotic, but things work out way much better. And also I could pull off some stuff, and I'm the how you say it, I find the gaps very easily, and also I like to break the defaults of other teams, and I think I will clash with Zeta pretty well. But the rest of the team is what I meant. It's robotic, and it was only me who had the freedom to do something, which I'm kind of glad that my team gives me freedom. But I also would like everyone else the freedom too at some point.
By the way, let's talk about some of the teams that aren't in the tournament, because obviously there was some very big names that had different stories. Gio, when we had the episode where we had Barbar on, it sounded to me like he was realistically just bigging up the idea of versatility and all the possible. Look, if you're a coach, I get why that'd be a brilliant concept. The problem I have is I don't know if he's just biased to EU teams, but it did actually feel like he overrated Team Liquid a bit. He was making them sound really fucking strong. Were they underwhelming to you in the playoffs? Obviously, they were supposed to go further than they did, sure.
the big thing that we were talking about with Team Liquid, and this point is why I was the most surprised that Team Liquid seemed to have kind of flopped in the playoffs, and that is that we were really hyping up their LAN experience. And we were like,
yes.
oh, like when you're going into a competition against a bunch of teams that don't necessarily have tons of LAN experience, and you need to have that kind of veteranship, whatever, like, that is what I thought would drive Team Liquid, because I am not a huge fan of the way that Team Liquid, like, play, just in terms of, the fact that they, like, switch roles out a bunch. And I know some people are like, well, for the different maps, like, the different role, blah, blah, blah. For me, personally, it's just not my favorite way of seeing a team play. Team Liquid didn't qualify for this event. Like, at the end of the day, they didn't. So, in terms of, like, the actual level of play, I suppose it's understandable that Team Liquid would have gone out kind of early. I think that they did such a good job in the group stage that maybe I would have expected more, but actually thinking about it, they beat Crew and they beat Xerxia. They didn't actually have to play Optic in the group stage.
Yes.
That really would have probably been the measuring stick as to what to expect from them in the playoffs, because obviously Crew and Xerxia didn't make it into the bracket. But yeah, I think given I thought that maybe their LAN experience would give them a bit more of an edge than we did see from them. But in terms of, like, how I have preference for different playstyles and whatnot, I personally... I'm not super surprised that the Team Liquid style of doing things did not get them very far compared to other teams.
What do you think of Team Liquid, Durka? Because obviously they've got huge names. Like, it sounds cool if you can play all these agents, but in my opinion, here's the problem. If you do something wacky, right, it has to work before it's cool. It's not just cool that's like a great idea. So, like, obviously everyone would love to say, well, we all play 4 different agents and duelists, but you have to make it work. So what do you think thoughts on Team Liquid?
I don't like their structure just by looking at the agency. It's like their roles just clash. Everyone can play like same agents mostly. It's like it sometimes feels like they have 3 or 4 duelists in the team, which is like a bad thing. And we had a problem last Iceland with that too, where I played like Jet, Sova, and Sage sometimes, which is like almost 3 different roles. And Doma played like Sky on some maps, Sage I think, then Raze, which is like already a clash between 2 players, instead of putting like me on Jet and Raze and Dom on Flashes, which we did later on, and I think it would work better for us. I think they need to figure out roles for their players, change, like, I don't know, maybe even do changes on that, like based on the team. If they cannot like get someone to play those agents, then like I think it's a moment where you say like, why are you in this team then? Like,
let me ask you a tough question, right? Yeah. Just hypothetically, imagine you were the general manager of Team Liquid and you can choose what direction to take the team in, right? We won't necessarily say who you can't or who you've recruited. All I would ask is this: which players would you focus on in this lineup? Like, who would you want to be on the duelist, and who would you want to be the focal point? Because I notice all the discussion is always like, we might put Scream on a duelist. Like, isn't that why you had him in the team? Like, what the fuck were you doing before? Like, they always do that thing in interviews where they themselves keep saying, we're going to change things up. It's like, you're the ones who picked it. Like, what? So who would you focus on? Who are the players that you want the team to be based around to be good?
Scream duelist, of course. I think Yampi performed good on Sova/Sentinels, but it's like, if I would have to pick one, I think I'll still go with Sova.
Okay.
Or like Initiators, probably. Then it's like, Naivira, I think they took him as a Sentinel, but then there's the thing, Link plays Sentinel too, so it's like...
Right.
Like, for me, it's like, one of them has to adapt to other role, or there's no point of them 2 being in the team. Maybe I don't see something, but it's like, if you want a team, you need 5 good players on their roles. And right now there is like players that conflict roles between each other. And it's like, I don't even know who's their IGL. I don't know who could be IGL, because there's
I believe they said it's Yampy, but who knows if that's true.
Yeah, but then
feels weird.
But then I read somewhere that they're trying to put it on Link now. When it was like, before it was Scream and partly Soulcast, and I'm like, like for me, if I'm even like some VLR.gg user, I'm like, why don't you just get a leader like Agile, like
true,
and then build of that? It's just like a clash. They try to change each other. It's like different event, different role for the player, and like I don't know what they're going for with that. My
biggest controversial Valorant esports opinion has always been that I am not a fan of Yampy. It's not that I think he's a bad player. It's that for me on Team Liquid, it has always felt like they have taken this mechanically great player and tried to put him in this roster, and there is not really a place for him on this roster. Like, for me, it's always felt like they've tried him on these different roles and nothing has ever quite worked for him, and they know he's really good individually, so they want to keep him there. But like, I never really liked Yampy on Jet, and I know there are people who sing the praises of Yampy on Jet, but I always felt like having Yampy on the duelist, especially while he was IGLing, just felt kind of uncomfortable. It didn't feel like he was getting as much out of the role as other duelists at the same time were doing in Europe. And I always felt like Scream should have been the guy that they were basing everything around, and instead sometimes it felt like they were making compromises with Scream because they felt like they could put him onto different roles to make up for the fact that they wanted Yampy to be like this center guy. And for me personally, it's like, I think Yampy's a great player. I've just never, it has always very slightly felt like they've managed to take 5 pieces that will all fit in the jar, but like don't fit in the jar in like a tessellating kind of way that you really want from a team. And that's always just felt very slightly uncomfortable about Team Liquid for me.
Okay. I can see what you mean by that, because I have to say, when I look at this team and I've read all these interviews about them where they're all giving all these conflicting opinions, it does sound like what they've done is, because if people don't know, most of their players, almost all of them, including the coach, come from CSGO. It looks like their logic is, look, we're all really good at CSGO, so like, surely we can figure this out. And it's like, in this scenario, I'm like you, Dirk, I would just say, why not just get someone who plays that fucking role? Just get the best guy who plays that role in Valorant, don't just go, but yeah, Nivera's AWP in CS. It doesn't matter, it's not CSGO, is it? Because if people don't know, the weirdest thing is, those 3 players are like hard mechanical players in CSGO. Nivera was like a pure AWPer who was barely experienced, and all he did was AWP. That's all. He was the 6th man in Vitality. They just brought him into AWP on maps. Scream is just famous for just like only being the fucking guy with the crosshair headshot everyone. And then Yampy was just very inexperienced, but he was also just like a mechanics monster with the AWP. So that's why I find it so weird that when I look into the roles they play in the game, I'm like, what the fuck? There's only like one guy who's on the role that makes sense for him. What the fuck? What do you think, Dirka?
Yeah, I'm on the same opinion. It just like feels uncomfortable having that many players that I think are only for one role. And it's like, I think each one of them will shine on that role the best, but they cannot play 3 players in the same role. So it's like, sometimes like you will have to like let someone play some dog role, and he might have dog performance.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And like, do you really need a team where like 2 or 3 players have to make sacrifices like that all the time? Where you can just get someone like on those roles if they cannot perform. And like, yeah, there's a bunch of CS players, and I see like, even I think I discussed that on stream with viewers or something. It's like they have 5 CS players, and like it feels like they don't know what roles to pick. But I don't want to like complain about it, or like
you don't want to get too good. Just stay as you are.
Too. And it's like I'm friends with some of them.
Of course,
I'm also like sometimes thinking like, what's the point if they can just like make something like work? And even in our team, like last year at Champs, we only had 2 CS players, which is like me and Booster, and we weren't known for like top frag.
Yeah, exactly.
Or doing such. I was opera for some like tier 2000 Finnish team.
Sure.
But like here I'm just entering Booster, didn't IGL back then either, and we are now doing our jobs where we think we are the best, and also we took like one player from Rust, which is like just a building game, farming game.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
And
it's a bit of a weird angle, but okay.
And he did a good job on like Sentinel. Then we had like 2 Battle Royals players, one like Doma on Ray / Flashers, and Mason.
I'm sure that brings something, right? Having all these different games coming in together, right?
And it's like, I don't feel like you need that much of CS experience. I think you might only need one guy with basics who can just like teach that to everyone else. It's not like you need 5 players from CSGO that know the basics. Like, it's a different game after all, and there's going to be different issues.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.